start getting it right, our loyal listeners will be like, who are these people?
Well, speaking of loyal listeners, we're going to have a little discussion about cult classics today.
Which is a term, when I heard it as a kid, I didn't quite get what it meant.
You thought it was like devil worshippers?
I don't know what I thought, but I know the word cult had certain connotations.
Right.
And I didn't get like what a cult classic was, especially when they listed a bunch of movies I liked.
Yeah. There's no Satan worshiping in that at all.
Well, it's just like, I'm like, why is that a cult classic? I just didn't get it.
Right. So upon research, what would you say would be your definition?
I'd say that the standard definition of a cult classic is something that was not a huge hit when it came out for one reason or another, but through word of mouth, through repeated viewings on TV or whatever, it gains a cult following,
right,
and becomes a classic, becomes a standard bearer.
Okay.
There are a lot of films nowadays that a lot of people take as, this is a standard of the time that
weren't successful when they came out.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the basics everybody talks about is Rocky Horror Picture Show. So
Yeah.
I'm not even going to go into that one. But what would be a movie that you enjoy that would fall into that category?
One of the ones that falls into that category for me, Monster Squad.
Okay.
That was a big one when I was a kid. The thing you have to understand, and for younger listeners, with the internet and everything, I think it's a little easier. But back in the day of like VHS, like it was a lot harder for a film to kind of gain that status.
Right.
Like somebody had to see it
and tell you about it.
Yeah, and then you had to go. It's like a pyramid scheme.
Right.
And
Monster Squad is multi-level marketing.
Yeah, and Monster Squad is one of those movies I remember watching so much, and I love it now for all of its faults. But it was one of those films that when you met someone else who liked it, you felt like you were joining a secret club.
Or a cult, perhaps.
Or a cult, yes. But I remember that one, and of course the line, Wolfman's got nards.
Yeah.
Went around the schoolyard like wildfire, and everybody was like, where is this coming from? And then we all had to go see it, and then, yeah, it became a big thing.
Okay.
What about you? What's one?
Well, I think of, one that is a staple in our house is The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes.
And, okay, if you're a long-time listener, you know that I grew up in a very religious household, and that was not allowed viewing in my house. So I didn't really know if it was popular or not. And then when I had kids and I got older and I kind of got, into kind of spooky stuff, I watched it and I loved it. And so does our youngest daughter.
Yeah.
And the amount of Jack Skellington clothes that she has is
it's kept hot topic in business.
That's a thing. Like, this movie came out 30 years ago now?
Yeah, 93, 94. I think I was in middle school or high school. I cannot remember. I think it was middle school.
Right, and apparently it was not a success in the theater.
No, and I remember I went and saw it in the theater. Me and my friend went and saw it. And, because the buzz just was, how are they going to do this? How do you blend a Christian holiday and a pagan holiday, from a child's point of view? I know the history is a little bit more murky than that. But went and saw it, and this is great. Bought the soundtrack. It was, became standard listening and viewing around the holidays. But nobody really talked much about it until the early 2000s when Hot Topic came along.
Well, I remember when I went to school at the University of Alaska, and I really started to, kind of branch out with the people I knew, and it was almost required viewing for a lot of the people there. And then
at certain points in history become kind of that required viewing. Like when I was starting at UAA, that's when South Park was really in its big boom. So the early films of Matt Stone and Trey Parker, Orgasmo, Cannibal the Musical, those became kind of the cult.
Right.
The cult films that had to be viewed around the theater department. We had viewing parties for them. So it was like, yeah. It's interesting how, and I'm sure each college generation has had their own.
Well, I think that high school and college kids, I mean, real hot take here, but I think they really kind of decide what is the hot button for that,
Yeah.
you know? More that maybe weren't so great in the theater, but kind of gained following. Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah, which I've never seen it. It never.
It is exactly the kind of movie that would irritate you so much, but I love.
I'm surprised we haven't watched it yet.
I would also say the movies of Chris Farley. He never really did great in the box office, but I would consider. I always know a Tommy Boy fan because we will, like the other day at rehearsal, one of the people there at rehearsal made a fat man in a little coat comment. You know, like it just works its way into your lexicon.
You know, the one that's shocking, and this is one that, these days, like we were talking about, how some of these become so ingrained in the culture that you're like, that was a failure when it came out. Like Nightmare Before Christmas, obviously, but The Princess Bride.
Right.
Like, have you ever met anyone who didn't like The Princess Bride?
Now, that is one of the few movies we were allowed to watch when I was, growing up super religious, because it's pretty clean. Like, there's one line about breasts, but that's it. Like, it's pretty clean. And so, like, everyone I knew growing up watched it. If you talk about Wesley and Buttercup, everyone knows what that is.
Yeah, exactly. And like now, again, it's again through Hot Topic, because I remember a lot of shirts back in the day. I had an Andre the Giant one that said, "Anybody want a peanut?"
Anybody want a peanut?
And that's the thing. It's so quotable that like the fact that there was a time when this was a little film. I mean, read Carrie Elway's book.
That was really interesting.
If you've never read it or listened to the audiobook of Carrie Elway's book, As You Wish, read it. It's awesome. And he, just this behind the scenes stuff of making the movie. And he talks about, that it was a disappointment, that everybody who worked on the movie loved it and they were so thrilled by it, and that it didn't click with audiences, or critics at the time. It really discouraged a lot of them.
Now it's probably one of the most well-known or recognizable movies that there is.
And not only that, but universally beloved.
Like on the Parks and Recreation, Leslie and Ben dress up as Leslie and Buttercup one year. Exactly.
And it's like, because you have cult classics that are, kind of enjoyed ironically, like the films of Ed Wood.
Right.
Room, Birdemic, Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh, when we say Room, it's the Tommy Wiseau
one, yeah.
Yeah, not the Brie Larson one.
Yeah, exactly. But Mystery Science Theater 3000 was responsible for bringing a lot of these kind of obscure movies, Time Chasers, Hobgoblins, Manos, The Hands of Fate, the Gamera movies, into a more prominent. But you can argue the quality of all of those. But I've never heard anyone who was like, The Princess Bride.
No, it's such a beautiful movie.
Yeah, everybody loves it. So you're like, how did this not work then?
Well, I think that there is another category of cult classics, and we talked about this for a minute. Movies that were pretty popular at the time, but then kind of fell out of the zeitgeist and then have resurged.
Yeah.
One that my teenagers love is Clueless.
Yeah.
And Legally Blonde. I don't know how many times we've rewatched Legally Blonde or quoted Jennifer Coolidge from those movies. And they're 20 years old, 30 years old, so they were popular at the time, but then, it's not like anyone in the early 2000s was really talking about Clueless, and then now the teenagers have gotten back into it. I don't know if it's because the styles have become fashionable again. I think this also lends itself to things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer becoming more popular. Like, our youngest has started watching that.
I think it has to do, I think something like Clueless having a resurgence, I think that has to do with the, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly.
Yeah.
But trends and everything go in a
Cycle.
A cycle, yes, thank you. That's exactly, I could not think of the word.
In a round thing.
Yes. And Clueless was one of those 90s films that was just happy and bubbly and bright and colorful, and then as we kind of segued into the later 90s, we got very self-serious.
Well, and we also got very cynical.
Yes.
And something about Clueless and Legally Blonde both is that their main characters are not cynical. They're very sincere.
Yeah.
And I think that there's kind of a hunger for that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think as we're kind of progressing out, and I think people are looking for more hopeful, fare, I think that's why a lot of those things. You know what else could be considered a cult, kind of a resurgent cult classic? More on the TV side of things. The Adam West Batman.
Right.
Which,
well, I would say that, I was going to say that's more your generation of resurgence.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I remember loving it as a kid.
Right.
Like, as a kid, that was Batman.
Right, but even when you were a kid, that would have been in reruns.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but then, you hit teenager, and then you become cynical, and you're like, oh my God, he's got everything in that belt. Oh my God, it's so stupid. Oh, how, not getting that it's part of the joke.
I think I would have wanted to smack teenage you sometimes.
I think so too. I want to smack teenage me sometimes. Are you kidding? But then, kind of as you get older and you get tired of the dark. You're tired of the dark, gross, super serious Batman. It's like the bright, colorful, hopeful, teaching lessons to kids Adam West version. There's that makes you happy. That fills you with glee.
Well, you kind of are into that resurgent stuff anyways. I would say, I remember people in our generation getting back into, maybe not as much Abbott Costello as you did, but the Marx Brothers.
Yeah.
But the ones I really latched onto were due to a little show on TBS called Dinner and a Movie.
Yep.
And they would show constantly. They would show Dirty Dancing and Tomcats with Goldie Hawn in it, and Overboard with Goldie Hawn. Those were the three major ones that I can really remember watching over and over and over again.
I think Dirty Dancing is another example of a resurgence, a cult classic.
Right.
So,
because every girl my age probably can quote big spots in that movie, even though it was really it came out when I was only a couple of years old, and so it was an older movie by the time, like I said, I was watching it on TBS. So,
but I do remember girls of my generation, because that would have been about the time the film came out, and it was the movie for the soundtrack was required listening for young ladies of my generation.
Anytime that anyone gets lifted up in the air, you got to sing, "I've had the time of my life." Exactly. How many times have we done that while watching wrestling?
Yeah, true.
So everybody, Dirty Dancing is definitely a classic.
You know what else is a cult classic that again, we don't think of it as one because it's just so prevalent? A Christmas Story.
Oh yeah, that wasn't very popular.
I don't even remember that ever being advertised.
Another one that is popular due to TBS.
Yeah.
Because they would play A Christmas Story for 24 hours on Christmas Day. I don't know if they still do that or not, but
yeah, I think they do. And
TBS, man, bringing movies back.
But yeah, well, say what you want about Ted Turner,
Yeah.
but the man loves classic movies.
He does. I mean, he's got a whole channel devoted to it.
Yeah, and he's very dedicated to film preservation. So,
right.
But
yeah, I would say that would be. Oh, excuse me. That was a big yawn. That one is definitely considered a classic.
Yeah, it's a standard now. Like you have a hard time. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
During the holidays. So.
I do wish, I would watch Dinner and a Movie again, because they would do these pop-up things where they would give you information about the movie. And I remember, just the other day, I was yelling at you for not knowing things about Dirty Dancing.
You were having fun with the fact you knew more about a movie than I did.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't know Patrick Swayze wrote the song for the movie.
I knew he wrote "She's Like the Wind." I didn't know "Hungry Eyes." So I'm sorry, but I knew "She's Like the Wind" was one of his.
Anyways,
it's kind of the ultimate example of a cult classic, and the thing that had probably the most, I would say, and maybe other people argue, but I think the one that has had the most cultural influence, Star Trek.
Okay, yeah, you don't think Star Trek was popular?
The original Star Trek was canceled after 3 seasons.
Okay.
And it's one of the biggest stories in sci-fi, and its fans kept it alive. They started the convention circuit.
Okay.
They started the getting together and trading videos, because you didn't have home video back then.
Right.
Or so it was, they started kind of the campaigns for reruns.
Yeah.
And all of that. Some of them, I don't know if it's in the same way, but started fan fiction.
Right.
Writing the stories that happened in between.
And predominantly non-sexual fan fiction.
Yes, this is back before that. This is back before all fan fiction was people hooking up. They got the first movie.
There's Kirk, Spock.
Oh, I know there is. I don't doubt that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
But they got the first movie made, and so on and so on and so on.
Well, that's a successful, because the movies were successful, and then the shows that came afterwards were predominantly successful. There are less successful things where fans have fought to get things back. So, Arrested Development.
Yeah.
Fans did a write-in for that to try to get it back on the air, and it did come back, but the seasons after that came back were not good. Firefly, they did that.
That's kind of the most, well, I don't know if it's the most recent, but
right.
It's one of the most famous stories.
No, it's not the most recent. Community would be more recent than that. But yeah, Firefly, where it went off the air, and then what was the Firefly was the series?
Yeah.
What was the name of the movie?
Serenity,
right. Serenity. So they did get their movie. Heartbreaking movie. Friggin' frickers. And little known piece of information to the fans out there, my youngest daughter is named after River Tam and Firefly.
Yeah.
So, I would like to say she was also named after River Song, but I didn't actually start watching Doctor Who until after she was born. So, yeah.
But yeah, sometimes the fandoms, like I say, they can get something brought back, but then they're not satisfied with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Will and Grace reboot had that issue. There was a lot of people who stopped watching Roseanne when it became
The Connors.
But that was really, Roseanne Barr's fault, because she got all racist and Trumpy. So, but anyways.
But yeah, it is interesting, and like I said, we talked about it a little bit, but there's also that category of the so bad they're good.
Oh yes,
Kinda
that has
cult.
a cult classic.
You know, like I said, most notably the films of like Ed Wood, you know, Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Right, Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, where they will have like entire viewing parties.
Yep.
You know, for these films, and everybody acknowledges they're bad, but there's something inherently charming
Right.
about them. And
our middle kid, she has a fondness for a student film named
Lamageddon. Lamageddon. It's her favorite movie of all time.
She has had several viewing parties to expose her friends to Lamageddon.
Yes.
And that's like, you have to go looking for that one. That one, I think, like, it is truly like a student film.
And I think that is I think that's the secret. I think that is the secret. You know, people ask like, what makes a cult classic, and why are some things cult classics and other things not? I think, and you said it with things like Clueless and Legally Blonde, I think there has to be an underline of sincerity,
right,
in the product itself.
Right. I think that, you know, that's a common theme for us, whether you're talking about satire or parody or things like this. There has to be genuine love for what you are doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, again, my favorite TV show of all time is Mystery Science Theater 3000, where they make fun of movies, but you can tell, except in like one or two instances, that there is a deep respect for the just making a movie and just trying to, you know, you watch something like Plan 9 from Outer Space, and yes, it's not a great film, but there is something very sincere in the in Ed Wood's desire to make it. You watch another one I love, Robot Monster, where it literally does look like these people just grabbed a camera and whatever gorilla suit and space helmet they could find, said, "Hey, let's make a movie." You know, I think for it to become a cult classic, a genuine one, there has to be that level of sincerity in it.
Which brings us to one that we kind of skipped over, but I think is very influential and falls right into that category, and that's Clerks.
Yeah.
Like Clerks, he literally borrowed money, saved money, made the movie with what, $15,000?
Yeah, cast his friends.
A black and white film because it was cheaper.
Filmed it in the convenience store that he worked at.
Right.
You know, again, that other piece of movie trivia, the reason, you know, that great running gag about the shutters being drawn the whole time is because they were filming at night.
Right.
And he had to come up with a reason why, you know, the shutters, and there was no sunlight coming in.
That is a genuine love of film and wanting to make something. And now Kevin Smith is probably, I would put him up there as one of the more well-known creators.
Yeah.
Out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's still, I mean, people freaking go nuts for Jay and Silent Bob.
Yep, and he's still, and while he's not directing as much anymore, you know, he's making TV shows. He made the Masters of the Universe show on Netflix. And even when he does direct, I mean, a lot of people can badmouth some of the films that he's made, and yeah, some of the stuff.
Some of them are weird.
But
Tusk, that was awesome.
Yeah, but what I like about him is that he's at a point in his career now, it's like, I just want to make this fucking movie. I don't care if it's good or not. I don't care if people like it or not. My friends and I had this idea, and again, there's that, it feels like that, my friends and I wanted to make a movie, so we did, and if you don't like it, fuck you.
Yeah.
And I respect that.
Like, that is, I mean, Clerks, the acting is not good.
No.
But it is, I don't know, I think it opens up both the idea of the filmmaker, but also this nerd culture type of idea. And I think that, because, like, if you look at Ransel and Dante, the way way that they talked to each other was like how a lot of us in the theater community talked to each other.
Well, it opened up things again for shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Yeah.
or Scream. These kind of ultra aware,
Hyper intelligent.
heightened language.
Yes.
You know, I that's how I always describe Kevin Smith's writing, is it's heightened language, where it is stuff we talk about, but it's done so in an eloquence that you don't necessarily hear.
But it's so natural. And
Yes.
I think that's because that's who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you listen to interviews with him, if you watch things where he's just himself, that's like he sounds exactly like that.
Yeah. But yeah, Kevin Smith's films are definitely cult classics, and he built an entire career out of that. A very long-lasting, very, he is the king of nerds.
Yep. So, anyways, the whole conversation about cult classics is because we're going to see kind of a quirky film that may end up falling into that category.
Yep.
We're planning to see Lisa Frankenstein. So hopefully that's the movie we come back with when we come back from break.
Okay.
All right, and we are back.
Yay.
And we're not the only one back. Cole Sprouse gets to come back. Come back from playing Jughead, and also come back from the dead.
Oh, is that who he is?
Yeah.
Is that he played, was that in Riverdale?
In Riverdale, he was Jughead.
Okay.
But of course, he was in The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Oh, well, I'm going to take your word for that.
And also, he played Ross's son a million years ago on Friends.
Really?
Yes.
That I did not know.
This was Ben.
Wow, okay.
On Friends.
Oh, well, I mean,
he and his twin brother.
Oh,
Lola
yeah.
Dylan. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So
all right, so now I know. And knowing is half the battle, G.I. Joe. Okay, groovy.
So, we talked about cult classics leading into this, and that's because this is got the vibes of becoming one of those type of movies.
Yeah, it really does. This is one that it feels like, if it's marketed right, or if the right audience finds it,
Yes.
I think it's gonna be a beloved little slice of cinema for a while. And, you never know these days. It's very hard to tell.
Right. That was like an old man statement.
Well,
right there. You never know these days.
Well, I'm sorry. The truth is the truth.
But yes, this feels like the girls who grew up on Nightmare Before Christmas and are now into like horror movies are gonna love this.
Yeah.
So first of all, this is a Diablo Cody screenplay.
Yeah.
Diablo Cody was the one who wrote Juno, which in itself is a cult classic.
Yes.
But also, she wrote Jennifer's Body.
Yeah.
Which definitely did not get a lot of heat coming out, but...
Well, it got heat, but not for the right reasons.
Right, you were saying you remembered people not liking it.
I don't know if that's... I think the reason maybe could have been that it got caught in the Megan Fox backlash.
Yes, here.
Because there was a lot of that, and she was...
Which, I don't know that was deserved. That's another one of those people who, like, did she deserve the attitude that people gave her, or was she put in situations where she didn't have a lot of choice?
I think it's not 6 to 1, half dozen the other. I think it's a little bit of the fact that I don't think she was a very good actor, but I think a lot of it was she was put in situations that did not prepare her for success, or did not benefit her.
Well, and I know that a lot of she's come out recently and was talked frankly about being really uncomfortable and having no say in how she was presented.
Yeah, and I can't say I blame her for being mad about that.
Right. So
Yeah, I think you're, well, according to you,
Yeah.
you know, and according to the teenage daughters we have.
Yeah.
You know?
So, it feels, it's been a minute since I watched that, but it felt like, I feel like it was about taking vengeance and taking control.
Well, it was what was at the time a modern day take on the revenge,
Right.
the revenge horror movie, the I spit on your grave,
Yeah.
kind of thing, you know?
Right.
So.
And the fact that it was being done by a pretty girl was probably not looked down on, or looked at very well. There is still a lot of patriarchy and misogyny in horror movies.
I mean, that's what they're built on.
Yeah. Which is very odd.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying, yeah, I always think there's a scene from the Mystery Science Theater episode, The Horror at Party Beach, where one of the monsters is attacking a girl, and I think it's Mike, says, do you think a lot of filmmakers have issues with women?
Well, Christopher Nolan, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of horror movies can be very progressive, and the fact that there's still so much misogyny in them is really kind of disheartening.
Yeah.
I think it's getting better, though.
It is. Well, I think with things like Scream,
Right.
where the spotlight was really shown on the trope of like the last girl.
Right.
I think since horror films kind of went through that period of being much more self-aware, I think they have kind of been making that
Slowly but surely.
But I think it's one of those things you're never going to get rid of completely.
So we have Diablo Cody wrote this, and this is actually directed by Zelda Williams, who is the daughter of Robin Williams. I don't think she's directed in a feature film yet.
I don't believe
this
so.
Is her first.
Yeah, I don't believe so. I could be wrong about that, but I believe you're right.
I think she mainly does voice work. But yeah, she directed this one.
Yep.
Starring Catherine Newton.
Yep.
Who was the new Cassie Lang in the Ant-Man franchise, but also was in a movie that you like a horror movie you kind of dug a couple years ago called Freaky.
Yeah, she was in that. That was a fun little film.
So she's this isn't her first ride on the comedy horror express.
Yeah.
Which is what I would put this under. Would be.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. This is a tongue firmly implanted in cheek.
Right.
Kind of horror movie. I don't even know if it's necessarily it has horror tropes, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a horror film. I would put it in
the same type of genre. It would be in the same subgenre as Serial Mom.
Yeah.
You know.
Kind of in that there with Once Bitten with Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
You know.
So, okay, so we've got Catherine Newton is playing Lisa Swallows, which unfortunately.
Yeah, what a name.
Who is kind of on the the misfit side of things.
She is your typical horror movie, small town, or not even horror movie. That 80s movie. Outcast, not cool girl.
Right.
She's basically Molly Ringwald.
But no, I would say like I said, she's Lydia Deetz. She's Lydia Deetz from Beetlejuice.
But I think that's the difference here, is that I feel like this is an 80s teen comedy with horror movie aspects sprinkled in, as opposed to it's
very 80s. Like you open up on a pink bathroom and a hair crimping.
Yeah, so unlike something like Beetlejuice, which is very, Tim Burton's early work is very very clear in that what he finds most scary is normalcy.
Yeah.
And that's very clear from everything. But he's not really this one's not really shining a spotlight on her as Lydia. She's the outsider, the not frumpy, the secretly hot one, but she hasn't embraced her confidence or anything like that. Again, she's the Molly Ringwald.
So she lives in a small town with her stepmom and dad and stepsister.
Mm-hmm.
Stepsister, of course, is pageant girl, Miss Hawaiian Tropic, cheerleader, top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
And 55, honey. And then we find out pretty early on that her mom kind of died horrifically.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of very over the top.
Yes.
A lot of this is very over the top. And of course she has this graveyard that she loves, and she spends time at the Bachelor's Grove.
Yeah, Bachelor's Grove.
Where the unmarried bachelors are buried.
It's a very specific graveyard, I have to say.
It is.
Very specific.
And she spends time making wax rubbings of the gravestones. And then, like, circumstances happen, and one of the bachelors comes back from the grave. And it's not a Frankenstein movie in the traditional sense of, I'm going to raise someone from the grave.
Yeah.
More like there's this corpse that's been reanimated, and we're going to figure out what to do with it.
And through Frankenstein science, he becomes more and more human as it goes.
Right.
So yeah, it is kind of a zombie movie crossed with a Frankenstein film.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting...
Oh, gosh. But yeah, I think you've got, okay, so what do you want to talk first? Plot, characters?
I don't know. The film's kind of all over the place.
So, our plots, I think there is some, I don't know, I feel if they would have added more things in, it would have been too long. But there were some, like, gaps. She's supposed to be really shy and quiet, never talks, but you don't really have long enough with her at the beginning of this to kind of get that notion. And then I don't know. I feel like the part where she starts to fall for Frankenstein is a little rough.
Yeah.
It could be smoothed out a little more. Maybe, like, I would have liked to see a little bit more. You can tell he's becoming more and more human, but, like, I would have liked to see some of the vocal changes, and, I would have liked to see it a little more clearly, although I do think that Cole Sprouse did a pretty good job, considering he doesn't actually have a vocal line until
the very end.
Credit sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Catherine Newton as the ditzy girl. What was cool about her was that there wasn't necessarily anything extraordinary about her. When she sings, she's not singing perfectly.
Yeah.
She's not necessarily a straight A student. She's not a brilliant scientist who's bringing back the corpse. She was just like a normal girl.
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
In terms of the plot, I think I'm coming at it more from since this is an 80s homage. I think it dealt with everything in that very big 80s kind of way. Motivation shifted and attitudes changed very quickly, but that didn't bother me because it's like it's an 80s movie.
Okay.
We're supposed to be big, loud, and
Right.
I think everything is dialed up to 11, if you'll pardon the terminology. And so, looking at it from that lens, I think the plot flowed fairly well.
Okay.
It does make me. There were a few things I was a little bit just confused by, and maybe get it.
Right.
So like I said, it is an 80s movie, and it is very big and all that. But I started getting kind of lost thematically. Like, what is the movie about? What is it trying to say? And I felt like that was a little confusing. I don't know if it really knew. Like, is Lisa someone we should be rooting for? Is she someone we shouldn't be rooting for? Because she ends up, being an accomplice to several murders.
Right.
And the planner of several.
I think the planner of only one.
Yeah, true.
Which, I mean, yeah, a murder's a murder, but
yeah.
But I also think that that's almost too pat to think, should we be rooting for her or should we not be rooting for her? Because I don't know. There's no purely good or evil people. So as far as the bad guy in this, there were some people who made bad choices and some people with bad behavior. But there wasn't any kind of there wasn't really a bad guy. There was an antagonist for sure.
Yeah.
And there was a creepy guy who tried to did sexually assault her. But there's not a quote unquote bad guy, like pure evil,
Yeah. So yeah, it was I think that maybe some of its themes might have gotten a little messy, a little mushed up.
Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to say what the out and out theme for this was.
Yeah. And I do believe that most everything has a theme. Even a comedy, a fun comedy, that there is a theme or a driving force behind it that informs, everything else that you do, that informs the visual language, the directorial choices, the acting choices. So there's got to be something that they're following, a story that they're trying to tell. And I don't know, maybe I'm looking too deep and like I say, in a movie about a girl falling in love with the zombie that came back to life. Maybe I'm looking too deep, but I don't know. It felt like it's a film that feels like it has something to say.
So what would you say the theme of the original Frankenstein is?
The theme of the original Frankenstein is always man's hubris.
Okay.
It's that concept of
the monster isn't always the one who looks like the monster.
Yeah, and Frankenstein's the real sin was that he was trying to play God and meddle in things that shouldn't be meddled with, and the creature is his punishment. So,
well, okay, but I also, like I said, I think that a lot of Frankenstein stories revolve around this idea that the person who is the evil, the person who is the bad guy or the real monster, isn't the one who looks like the monster.
Yeah, because they're the ones that are just, the creature is usually the one who is just trying to make do in the body and the situation he was born into.
Right, and if there was any monster in this, it's the stepmom.
Yeah.
And she is definitely evil and terrible, and she looks like the perfect little housewife in the 80s. She's a nurse, I care about everybody, I'm empathetic, and blah 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 blah. But she was the actual monster. So I could say that. Also, I would put that on to the stepsister as well, because you expect in these kind of movies for the head cheerleader character to be a total biatch, just awful, terrible, but she wasn't. She was really sweet, and she really loved her stepsister, and she was actually trying to be helpful in her own way.
Anyway, we were talking about the plot, I believe, and
yes,
whether it was
the theme.
Yeah.
Because
go that far. I don't think no. It felt to me like this had something more substantial it was trying to say, maybe about how far she, kind of like you were talking about her kind of becoming the monster.
Okay.
And abetting the monster because it made her feel good, and then seeing the toll that was taking on people.
Yeah.
And then trying to repent. I think that's what was going on.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing is that, a little bit of a spoiler here, but she never tries to run from her mistake. Like, she accepts that she's going to get arrested or die.
Yeah.
So that's I think an interesting little bit of it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not really sure about. I think it's a smart film. I don't know if it's as smart as it could have been,
or that it thinks it is.
That it thinks it is. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's entertaining.
Yeah. Well, it was very entertaining.
So let's talk. We just had Cole Sprouse did a great job of non-verbal acting.
Yeah.
It's kind of changing over the course of the movie. What about Carla Gugino?
Is that who played Lisa?
No, that's the stepmom, Janet.
Oh, yeah. She was your typical evil stepmom.
Yeah. Which is, I think, kind of an interesting turn for her. She's not necessarily a villain.
Yeah.
Carla Gugino.
I don't know. I feel like there's not much to say in that she was playing the trope and she played it well.
Right.
Though it is kind of one of those things. I realize it's taken from a different time, but I still don't see how any parent could sit there and listen to a step-parent tell their kid you're a psycho and you're a bitch and you're all this and just not say anything.
Right.
Like her stepsister stood up for her more than her dad did.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what?
Yeah. I think the dad was just kind of clueless.
Yeah.
Like, for a second I thought he might be a little predatory.
Well, the thing is, and I'm wondering, like, they never completed the story of who killed her mom.
No, that's true.
And it seemed like that's where they were headed, because it was
I wondered why they didn't tie that together.
because I thought it was going to be her dad.
Or I thought that maybe it was her.
Yeah.
And she's imagining this Frankenstein, and she's actually killing people with an
Yeah,
axe.
exactly. So, but it felt like they set that up for a specific reason and never really paid it off.
Yeah.
But maybe we're looking at it too much we're used to being spoon-fed.
Things, yeah.
I remember, when I would teach theater in high school, and I'd always show them 12 Angry Men.
Right.
And they would like it, but they'd get mad because they never told them who actually did it.
Right. And we are used to that.
And they're used to, they kept thinking it was going to be one of the jurors or something.
Which doesn't make any sense.
Well, but that's what they're used to.
Yeah.
They're used to that in modern. So maybe it was just a thing it wasn't a story they were supposed to tie up. It was a thing that was out of her control.
Right.
Because she even talks about that, death being out of people's control, and that's why it scares them. So maybe that's kind of why they never tied that back in. Maybe. I don't know.
So we also had, I'm trying to find her name, Liza Soberano was who played Taffy.
Played the stepsister.
Yes.
She was great.
Yeah, she was really great.
She was really good.
I think she's got a scream queen future.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, she's definitely kind of made for that kind of role.
She reminded, who she reminded me of? She reminded me, I think I'm going to mention this before the stoppage. She reminded me of, episodes of Buffy where Cordelia was trying to be nice.
Yes.
And that's what she reminded me of, because she was genuinely trying to be nice, but she'd say things in ways that could be taken as kind of,
like, oh, I don't think that blush is your color, or
yeah,
things like that.
yeah, or like when she's talking with her friends, like, she could talk about her sister. Oh, she could be a beauty queen if she had congeniality.
Right.
You know?
Which, you know, she's trying to be nice and talk about how beautiful she is, but
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so it is, but that's a thin line to walk.
I think she did a great job.
I did too. I really enjoyed her.
She was a, you know, she's a person of color playing that role too. You know, like, I think that I would say she's Hispanic. I think.
I don't know.
Filipino.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because she was talking about winning Miss Hawaiian.
That's not the same thing as Filipino.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah. So yeah, she's a Filipino actress. So I mean, that's not something you would get originally in the 80s movies.
No.
And I gotta say, the setting for this too, being set in 1989.
Yeah, so just as it's about to roll over into the 90s.
But so you do have, like, you got some goth kids, you got kids in flannel shirts, and that you do have, like, the mom in the leotard, but also, like, it looks honestly more like the 80s, like I remember it.
It looks like a lot of movies like this kind of look like they went to the Spirit Halloween and got the 80s kid Halloween costume.
I don't think
It's
so.
a little bit too bold. At least I never knew anybody in the 80s who dressed like those people.
Like what?
Like the way they dressed, or the way they even dressed in 80s movies. I never knew anybody who dressed like that.
I mean, I think that it was pretty on par for a lot of the looks. Now, I thought it looks much more realistic. I also, that was, talking about the character and the monster not being who you think, the kid who sexually assaults her is not the kid, he's the kid you would think would be the nerdy love interest who gets the girl in the end, you know?
Yeah, you definitely see, he was.
But instead, he was not.
Like I said, they were having a lot of fun playing with the tropes of an
You need to get
80s,
over into this thing.
an 80s teen movie.
Right.
You know, with a horror kind of splash to it.
Yeah. So, and I do think that was fun to have, like, the kid from the 1900s, or like turn of the century 1900s, 1800s, coming back as your Frankenstein character.
But I don't think they really did much of that. They really didn't play into that as much, which in a way I'm happy about.
They did a little bit with his classical music and with, you know.
But they didn't do like a lot of the standard jokes of fish out of water. He doesn't know what that modern thing does.
No, there were some things.
They were some, but it wasn't like the entirety of the movie.
Right.
Like a lot of films would just kind of build the whole premise around that.
Yeah.
And that's all they would do. You know.
Yeah, well, anyways, I liked the look of it. I liked the characters. I think it was a fun little jaunt.
Yeah. It was, like I say, it was definitely entertaining, never boring.
No. There was definitely a few times that I'm like, what?
Like what? Like what did that for you?
I think the last murder scene
Yeah.
was really one of the shocking ones. When she has the back massager in the closet, that was fun.
The quote-unquote back massager.
Yes.
In big quotation marks.
Yes. Yeah, you'll turn up here at Dollar Tree or a dollar store.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, like, there was definitely some moments where I was a little surprised by what happened. There's, in the last murder scene, there's a shadow of a body part flying across the room that just, like, it was like, oh my god. Yeah. So, and then you started cracking up when he, like, just just the way that Cole Sprouse is standing.
The whole thing in this is, I think, where the Frankenstein aspect comes in is that our creature is missing several parts, like a hand and an ear, and
don't go any farther.
That's all.
Okay.
And after they kill somebody, or after he kills somebody, he takes a body part and she sews it on for him. And this last scene that you're talking about, when she is sewing the extracted body part on, just his stance, the kind of hand on hips,
like he's posing for a portrait.
Yeah, lightly holding up the end of his shirt. It's very
good. Yes. So
I actually have to say that is something else I really appreciate. Is that this film could have gone like incredibly gory.
Yes.
And chose not to.
There were a few times where it was like, ew.
Yeah, but I mean, compare that to just about anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty tame.
Right.
By all accounts, you know. So I appreciate that. I know I get real tired. This is a tirade. Sorry. I get real tired of things online that, we never got a Wolverine movie with all the blood. It's like, blood doesn't make something better.
No.
More gore doesn't make something better.
No.
Just...
Yeah, I would hold up the remake of The Evil Dead, where it was literally raining buckets of blood on the stage or on the set, and it was not good.
Yeah, so, I mean, more gore, making things bloodier doesn't make it better. So I know that there will be some people probably, it'd be better if it was more gory. It's like, why? What is that going to get out? What are you going to get out of it more than
right?
Than that. So I as someone who is not a gore fan, I appreciated that.
Yes. Now I am going to need one of those black hats with the rose in the middle.
Yes, that was very the costume designer had a lot of fun on this.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Costume designer had a lot. They did, and they played with so many of those 80s teen movie tropes, like the makeover, where the character keeps coming out of the closet in different outfits.
Yes, the montage.
Yeah, they had a lot of fun with that. And so yeah, that's it. I guess before we wrap up, since this is Miss Williams, as far as we know, her feature film debut. What did you think of the directing?
The only part that I was not on board with was she's at a party at the beginning and she gets slipped something, and the whole making the camera seem like you are also high with her just makes me queasy. But I get it. Other than that, I think she did a really good job for her first solo venture. What do you think?
I think so too. I think it was a stylized movie, and I think I don't think it ever kind of went over the edge. I love that it actually had an opening credit sequence.
Yeah.
Since there aren't a lot of those these days, we save it for the end credits.
That was a really cool credit sequence.
Yeah,
too.
it gave us the exposition on the creature without needing to slow down the film.
Right.
So it's like, all right, great. Her dream sequence, Lisa's dream sequence in black and white.
Oh, that was really cool. I forgot about that.
That was really, I like little touches, like the fact that Lisa has posters for the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Mummy, like the original Universal films,
right,
on her wall. I like little touches like that, and so I think that there was some for a first outing. I think it was pretty good, but as we kind of said early on, she might want to think about when she goes forward, just what is the story she's trying to tell.
Right, and I don't know if that's more on her or Diablo Cody.
I think that's on the director.
Okay.
In my humble opinion, I think that's the director's. That's their job to kind of figure out, okay, what is it I'm trying to say, and how's the visual language and everything going to communicate that.
Right.
Excuse me.
I think part of it was just having a Gothic romance story.
But not a Gothic one.
A non-Gothic
Gothic romance. No.
Yes. And I did love the little bit at the end with Frankenstein and Lisa on the bench.
Yeah.
Like, I did love that.
And she's wrapped up like Elsa Lancaster.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I think there were a lot of really smart directorial touches. It's one of the kind of like with Creed 3. It's a good first outing, and you're kind of interested to see what the person is going to do going forward.
Right.
You know.
Wait, who directed Creed 3?
Michael B. Jordan.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, okay. Anything else we want to talk about before we grade this sucker?
No, great costumes. Just great costumes.
Oh yeah, and you can tell that Lisa was having a great time wearing them.
Oh yeah.
Like she was probably having a ball going in there every day.
Like with the curly hair too.
Yeah.
Like just love it.
So, okay. So, what is your final grade for Lisa Frankenstein?
You know, I think I'm gonna go solid B.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm gonna I'm sure I'll end up watching it again because this is right up the girls' our teen daughters'
definitely.
alley. But it's not like it's gonna be something that I gush over. But I think it was pretty solid, pretty interesting, and I hope Zelda Williams kind of keeps going.
Yeah. Well, for the first episode of our second season, I am going to actually go against our opening and say I agree. I am also going to go with B. Solid on this one. I think, like I say, entertaining, fun to look at. They had a lot of fun with the tropes. I think there are some directorial choices that needed to be explored or fine-tuned a little bit, but, you know, that's what first-time outings are for.
Right.
So, but I can totally see this becoming maybe not an annual watch, but like when we start doing Halloween movies and looking for something.
I don't know. It's kind of got a Valentine's vibe for me.
Yeah, true.
You know, I kind of I'm digging it for a Valentine's Day movie.
So might make it onto a Valentine's Day watch list. So yeah, you know, I enjoyed it.
All right.
Okay, so there we go. So
check out Lisa Frankenstein, people.
So yes, as I said, this is the first episode of our second season. This is the first episode of 2024, an actual movie that came out in this year.
Yes, up until this point, we've been reviewing 2023 movies.
But we're not quite done with the first season because we will be figuring out our top 10 lists and be getting ready to share those with you. And, of course, bringing you all the ups and downs of this year at the movies. So thank you all for coming along and listening.
Oh, yeah, there's some good ones coming out that, like, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, listeners. We're going to chat it again for a few minutes. So we've seen multiple trailers having gone to the movies recently. What movies are you excited about seeing?
I'm excited about. I like the what is it? The Annabelle, not Annabelle. Abigail, the vampire ballerina girl.
Yes.
Film that looks awesome.
45, honey.
We haven't seen a trailer for it, but the posters are out. I really want to see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah, that's your jam.
That is totally my jam.
Yeah.
I can't say that anything else is really. Oh, that one the one we saw the Order of Magical Negroes or something like that.
The American Society of Magical Negroes.
Yeah, that looks really good.
I am very much looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that looks fun.
Yeah. We saw a bunch of trailers tonight.
Yeah.
They did not. I swear it was 20 minutes before they started the movie.
It was.
What was there was another one that is kind of a horror movie that we were talking about.
The bear one, the Imaginary.
Oh, Imaginary Friend. We're gonna watch that, but I do not have high hopes for it.
I certainly do not.
That's why we need more bad movies this year.
We do.
We're
really gonna try to. I'm really trying to convince her that she needs to actively seek out some bad movies to review because it's fun and it's cathartic.
Do we have any Marvel movies coming out this year?
No, actually. The only Marvel films coming out are the Madam Web, which
looks terrible.
So that's one we're going to have to watch.
Yeah.
And Deadpool 3.
Oh, you hate Deadpool. I kind
do.
of like Deadpool.
But it's got Hugh Jackman in it.
Yeah, that's true.
Hugh Jackman's back. So I will put aside my distaste for the Deadpool film series to see Hugh Jackman, because Hugh Jackman's awesome.
All right.
So.
Okay, then. We got lots of stuff coming up this year, so stay tuned.
So thank you all for listening and coming along. Thank you, my love, for always being my favorite movie date.
Aww.
And as always, drive safe, and we will see you at the movies.